Hi, and welcome to another episode of Wine and Wisdom. I'm Thomas Hoang, and you're listening to the TL podcast, where knowledge is shared and no one takes themselves too seriously.
All right, here you go. You buy what? You start, man.
What am I starting here in Kingston?
No, actually, it's still going, by the way, so don't you worry about it. It's still going.
Oh, so we're recording?
Yeah.
So the book is Don't Bother Kids While They're Skateboarding.
Is that the book or is that the chapter?
So that's the chapter of the book, 12 rules. But it feels like the whole book. I had to listen to it like so many times to understand what it meant. Wow, what a chapter. I thought the others were terrible. Oh, sorry, hard. I'm sorry, but wow.
I actually didn't mind this one. It spoke about why blokes have been picked on their whole lives for no reason. And I thought it was perfect.
You okay? Do you need tissue?
Yeah, that's good. Actually, because before she would have stuck the finger up, we're out of camera sort of shot. Now you can see all the reactions and everything. It's good.
Yeah. No, you got the message loud and
I'm just going to sit back here, mate. Mind my own business.
So what we got out of it? So what's the big sort of things that we got out of it, Rick?
I think it started talking about like braveness versus stupidity, which was sort of like, again, we've talked about it heaps of times, but with this book, a lot of the time we read the title and then we start reading it and go, huh?
Yeah.
What is like, where do we match it up? But
I won't get started on the next one because it says go when you see a cat patted or something. So then it's started on that one, right?
But so he talked about obviously children and sometimes what they do can be borderline braveness and stupidity, and as parents we've got to obviously try and find that balance, and to allow them to do the things that they need to do as children, take risks, obviously within reason. Like, we're not going to go let them do something silly, but where it related back to skateboarding was obviously they're trialing new things, they're doing things which are risky, and which I know some of the stuff that they would do on the skateboard I personally wouldn't attempt, but they do it because they don't have necessarily that fear factor. They're gonna hurt themselves, definitely. They'll lose some skin or they'll hurt a bone or whatever, but the risk versus what they'll learn, I think, is what he was trying to get at.
Yep.
Like, you've got to let them overcome their own things, and you've got to let them try their own things, because as parents, you can't shelter them from what the world is going to be. Like, the world is the world, and they're kids. They're gonna
prepare them for the future, right?
Yeah.
But I want to question you guys about something that he said in that book. He was talking about these young kids. They go on the cranes. They climb cranes and they just walk out on the crane. You've seen that, right? He's gone. They're incredibly brave. I'm thinking they're incredibly stupid.
Yeah.
How do you guys see this? Because for me, he goes, they're brave. Hang on a second, that's not brave. That's stupidity.
Everyone has a different
And
tolerance.
that's exactly why I'm asking today, is because that risk factor, I think, is what he was saying. Some people are risk adverse to risk. And adverse to risk, thank you. I've got my thesaurus here. I've got that one right. But some people embrace it. But it comes back to real life as well, even with not just kids, with adults. People maybe, I don't know, starting a new business or a new job after we've come out through lockdown, wanting to start a new job because they've realised that lockdown has not served them well, and they've realised they've got more to offer.
I think, as you say, all kids and all adults will have that different level of risk they'll be up for, but it probably starts from when they're literally probably learning to crawl. Right. Because I know for me, like with Jordan, when he was little, he was always a pretty agile kid. So he would always attempt things, and he would watch other people and he would always try what they did. And for me, if he wasn't in danger, I'd let him go for it. If he was going to fall down a step or whatever, he'll be right. Like, it's not going to kill him, and he'll just learn. And then the next time he'll know what not to do. But I know a lot of times we'd be at gatherings with family friends or even within our own family or friend groups, or we'd be at playgrounds, and I'd hear other people saying to Jordan, oh, don't do that. Jordan, don't do this. No, Jordan, no this. And I'm like, no, he's fine. Like he can do it, but where it became hard was if other kids tried to copy him because they weren't as agile as him. And like for a normal 5-year-old, he's pretty agile. And I put that down to the fact that I've let him do all of that.
But as I was going to say, that agility may have come from that learning scenario that he had where the other kids were.
Oh, don't
climb this,
don't do that trick on the skateboard, don't do that trick on the skateboard, don't climb down that, don't climb up that, get off this, get off that. They're never going to learn.
Right.
They have to learn. They've got to learn for things for themselves. There's some things, obviously, if they're in danger, well, it's a different story. But other than that,
so were you raised the same way though? Because bubble wrap man on the
I was the last kid. I ate cat food and masturbate.
Because I'm hopeless, man. My kids, like I want them to climb and jump and knock themselves out and do all that stuff, but I can't. My anxiety levels are huge.
You can't let them.
I don't know if they're as big as, what did your kids name you?
A bubble wrap man.
Yeah.
Didn't they make you a jacket out of bubble wrap?
Well,
I was raised a little bit that way, like, you know, yes and no, a bit of both, and I probably fit into that mold. I'm not bubble wrap man, but I'm also not just 100% go for it, depending on what the activity is.
Yeah, it depends what it is. Like if he's going to run out in front of a car, that's
climb a tree and
Playing in traffic's not good.
Well, it depends on the local traffic. Really.
That's all I'm told as a kid.
You've got to let them. You can't, because you're not always going to be there for them. We've probably touched about it in other chapters and other stuff that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, but you're not always going to be around. So you have to teach them. You've got to do everything that you can while you are around so that when you're not around, they're best equipped to make the best decision.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
I think it goes back to real life as well, though, is that with that risk, for example, the skateboarder, they'll try a stunt and they'll try that stunt over and over and over again, okay? And then, so you've got the thought of doing the stunt, the action, the risk involved, and then the outcome, whether it's a failure or a success. And they'll failure, and then they'll make it a success. And then they take that to the next level. So then they move the bar a little bit higher and they try a more difficult stuff. And it comes with humans as well. You know, even I'll take it back to a business. Someone might open one business, then might open another one, and then employ some more staff and so forth. And when they become comfortable with where they are and they want to try, yes, I can do more, or we can fit in more, they've got that thought process, they've got the action, they know there's a risk, and the outcome will then take them back to that belief of, can they do it again? And if I can't, I need to learn how I can do it because I've got to grow that way. Because let's admit it, the people who are at the Olympics doing those bike tricks, the best in the world wins by far, he's on every day pushing the boundaries on his own bike track at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they made thousands of mistakes.
And they've broken bones and they've...
And that's the way we're going to improve, is by failing, by making those mistakes and hurting ourselves and tripping over in whatever way, whether it's metaphorically. Is that right, Kevin?
Yeah, that's nice.
In reality, you're like, look,
Yeah.
You've upped your game for
He
the
said that basically you're doing a disservice if you're constantly telling them what they can't do.
Yeah.
You're setting them their own boundaries. Within reason, they need to learn their own personal boundaries.
So bubble wrap man, you've been very quiet.
No, I'm listening because I actually learned a fair amount when I read the title. Because really, you have to let the kids learn by themselves. But when you go and have a look at these guys on the bike or they're doing their jump, just to do those 5 meters of jump, you know that they've been making mistakes for hours. And then it's one mistake after another. They've been fixing their issues. So when you then see Alexander getting on the bike and he's going to try and do those 5 meters, I'm going, mate, that's hundreds of hours to get there.
Yeah.
You don't even try this first.
Yeah.
And that's where the bubble wrap man comes out. So it's really a balance between a parent knows that stuff, but the kids they don't, because they see the other kid do this, they go, well, I can bypass 100 hours. The same thing as in business. The people who come into a business and open a real estate office and think, oh, well, I can do what that leader has done. But no, you don't understand. He has probably lost hundreds of thousands of dollars to sometimes to make certain mistakes. He's probably gone through losing 2 or 3 teams over that lifespan in order to get to that level. Yeah. So you can't just come in and do this. I still remember a leader saying to a young leader one day in real estate, mate, if you're going to start real estate, start big. Don't go like for 1 or 2, just go straight away. Go in for the 1040 we talk about. And when that young leader spoke to me, I said, no. You don't do that. You go slowly because there's leadership that's different. There's a management that is different. You don't know this. Anyway, so he's got up and he's tried this as many as possible. And suddenly, 2 months later, he's lost one team. And he goes again because he's got enormous amount of resilience. He goes back, he gets back up, goes out, get another team, 3 or 4, to lose them again.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's no problem with being bubble wrapped, as long as you use your intelligence, maybe if you can, to bubble wrap the right place.
Yeah.
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 Let's imagine now we're getting the kids to play with champagne or Chardonnay or a snake.
Chardonnay.
Right? Do you go for it? Because you have to learn by your mistake. You only make one mistake on that one. So I think this is where, as a parent, you have to look at that.
Yeah.
What is fascinating for me is in the book how he's talking about now the female gender really beating the male gender. And I think that he's leading somewhere there, you know.
I'm not going to speak, mate. I didn't enjoy the chapter at all.
Well, then tell us, man. This is where you're at. So, do you think that the female gender is
I
actually?
think he started talking about left side of politics and the ideologies coming into play and how hard it is, which we touched on in last week's live podcast. That no one can have an opinion anymore because the bubble wrap is now wrapped around society, where no one can have a different opinion to you. No one can say anything that might possibly offend you. It's bred into politics now. It's bred into the way we run our families, and it's bred into the way that we interact with each other. And his point is about how dangerous that is for the world. And then, yes, he used the male versus female thing as an example of that, where there is, I won't say misconception or perception or myth about men have been oppressing women for the whole of life. And he pulled out quite a few studies and statistics and anecdotal evidence to prove that not only has it not been that, it may actually be starting to turn into the other way. And he thinks if we keep going the other way, the male gender will be completely decimated.
No, not decimated. Just serve it.
But
Just serve it.
when he talks about
be around, you know.
Yeah, when he talks about the amount of females to males now doing university courses, who's going to be having the top jobs, but he talked about it in a way where it's a threat to the population, because if all the women are in all the top jobs, who's going to have the babies and who's going to populate the world? And he went down that path. And my take on that whole section of the book was, we've all been struggling together to help each other to get where everyone's going. But there have been instances, there's no doubt there have been instances throughout society where some cultures didn't allow women to vote, and
Absolutely.
some cultures still don't allow women to drive and all that sort of stuff. But overall, it's been a struggle. No, but it's been a struggle since day dot, by male and female, to help each other coexist and succeed. And I think that's where a lot of people misunderstand me, because I just think we are all equals, and that everyone used a beautiful line, and I wish I'd written it down, but I was in my car, about maybe it's not about gender or power, it's about competence. Maybe that's why.
So you still stuck on that week, huh? Last week.
No.
You still stuck on last week, mate.
Well, no, but he says it in this chapter. I thought, geez, I wish I'd had this line last week when I was trying to articulate my thoughts.
Yeah, well, it's good that he's saying this, because I'm going to show it to Alexander. It's where he says if they're healthy, women don't want boys, they want men.
What's wrong with Emily? Is she not well? Something she's got to tell you.
No,
It was the point. His point was, maybe on the men versus women thing, maybe the reason the guy got that job is because he was more competent, right? And it's not about power. And he talks about communist societies and how wrong all of that is. But he also talks about exactly the same thing with the ideologies that have been brought into play now, where people are trying to dismiss gender as even being a thing. They're trying to debase the whole function of our society, which is there is a man and there is a woman. Now you're not even allowed to call someone that if they don't want to be called that.
Yeah.
And like, mate, he would have copped some fierce backlash, especially the way the world's heading. But then he also said, imagine if the right side of politics, which is pretty much the opposite in thinking, what if they were getting funding from the government to propagate their side of the story? No one had ever allowed it. So it's been a very one-sided debate, I feel. And I think we're all of the understanding that we are all equals until a jar of salsa is involved, like I said last week. We are all equals and we've all got the same opportunities. And if you're good enough, you're good enough.
I love it when he says that maybe it's not gender bias, it's ability bias.
That's what
you were saying before. It's straight out ability bias. There's a saying that I've heard before. There's nothing as unequal as treating unequals equally. So, and then he goes to say, okay, men and women, rightio, we're about all women. Let's say white women and black women. How about black women and Native American women? But then we've got 500 tribes of Native American people. So which ones are they? Are we going to, so is everyone equal? Are we going to give everyone the same? Well, that's not society.
No, it doesn't exist. I don't believe in equality. It's not going to happen.
I thought the pay gap would have been a good thing, and I was thinking the pay gap would have been good until we then talked about the pay gap. I believe you can, take real estate for example. All right, real estate as an agent is a great equaliser as far as that goes.
Absolutely.
Because if you're a good agent, you'll get paid, and if you're not a good agent, you won't get paid. There's no difference in commission.
Forget gender.
There's no difference in commission to male or female.
Straight ability, right?
It's an ability, and any role that is based on commission is exactly that. But he tried to say, well, even he doesn't believe in doing the same job should get the same pay, because how do you decide what is the same job? Well, there are, without doubt, some careers and some jobs that are what they are, and you can say one person is doing the same job as another, and I believe they should be getting paid equally. But he had a bit of a difference of opinion there, which
but I think what he's talking about though is to try to defend the male gender as well.
Yeah.
Because he says boys will be boys. Let them do that. Boys need to push each other. Boys need to be rough on each other. That's how they actually learn about independence. So when you go to a young boy, I think that's from the book there, but where you say, keep on saying to him, no, don't do that and don't do this, you're actually removing all of this kind of experience that he needs to have in order to become someone who's strong. And so what happens is that as he grows up in society, he's now not so strong, and he's now vulnerable to maybe even women telling him what to do, because now there's more women at the top of these positions, right? And so this is where he's saying, if the kids are doing what the kids are meant to be doing for their gender, let them be. That's how I understand.
And if we're all being told we're equals from a very young age, where does the drive come from to succeed?
It will never be equal.
No.
It can't be equal.
But someone's always going to be better
than
someone. Yeah, exactly. And someone's always going to be better or worse. There's no.
But it's not necessarily, depends what you're talking about. It's not necessarily because of the gender as to why they're different.
No, 100%.
Why they're better or worse.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
No, but because there's going to be more though. There's going to be more ladies. So that's going to change the balance, because all these over time, it's always been hard labor, working the mines or going out into battles and go to war. But now you can touch on the computer and the machine will do things for you. So you can now have a full factory of just women building the best cars on the planet.
So like maybe more EQ than IQ.
Yes, so and ladies and women have been doing EQ since the beginning of time. So it's in their DNA, and the male, they don't have that. All that they have is, we need to be strong. But
not real smart, but we can lift everything.
He talked about, he said males will always sway towards things and females will always sway towards people. That's the
we are suited to industries though. I mean, physiology Physiological.
You're suited to a Jenny Craig.
Oh, sorry, the model. I mean, try and lay bricks in the 38-degree sun all day. It's not easy, but I'd rather do that than go and look after people in a nursing home.
Yeah.
So we are suited to certain roles. I mean, and that's gender. It's simple. We'll talk about it for a bit more further on, but
the crux of it is this. I think he's suggesting society needs to be run on the basis of freedom of who you are and what your predispositions are. And as soon as society tries to be run by an ideology, which he's used communism as the point, things go pear-shaped. So I think we've already gone too far, and I don't know if it'll ever come back down the politically correct path. But if we go too far that way, and everything has to be absolutely equal, and there can't be any differences in anything.
But isn't that a communist country to start with?
Isn't
it communism? It's everyone to have everything the same. Isn't that communism?
It's not possible that everyone will be equal, but if they try and enforce that, that's going to bring about the demise of most of what we've built. But it's a stupid argument anyway. What have we got in this country? Well, we had 2 female premiers. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, a female.
We had Margaret Thatcher many years ago. Had your mate Pauline Hanson.
Anti-vaxxer.
We're all subservient to the Queen, for God's sake.
There you go.
So this thing that all males are gooses and treat women like shit, and there's no opportunity for women in the world is just not real.
And we're not blind to say that it doesn't happen, because it does happen in certain pay equality, inequality, and so forth. It does happen in certain parts. But to say it happens all the time and everyone has to change is ridiculous.
You can't say, like I said last week, you can never say every male is this and every female is that. It's not. No. They're not.
And every situation is different.
Yeah.
And absolutely. I can do the same thing.
Oh, well, so what about now? Let's take this chapter into our job or our field. Ladies better than men? Men better than ladies in sales?
Depending on who's sitting in front. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I believe you believe a good female will always be a good male in real estate. I've never taken offence to it. I just flush anyone who comes close. So it can't be me. But why do you feel that way?
Because I think a house, it's already female territory. She's the one who makes the nest. She set things up. There's kids there. So I think a good sales lady who can really connect to this kind of stuff will always win, because this is why you see the men, most of the time when they come in, most of them, unless they have female energy, and we know some, they will always talk about professionalism. They will always talk about, I've got the best marketing. It's always about all this side that is about top price, gimmicky, where the lady, it's always about connection. And I think that if they use it properly, every woman would beat a man in a real estate competition.
To the person who matches that energy, though. Not every, but most houses you go into, male and female, husband and wife, the male's going to connect differently to the female's going to connect with it. So shouldn't it be split down the middle who's better? Because
it could be, but you're talking to me about who's the best, right? And we've learned about it, that the best can sometimes just win by a nose. I didn't say that it's 100-0, but even 51-49, one is the best. Yeah. Right? And I would say you give me a team of ladies, top sales ladies, I'll take them any day over men.
I think they've got a few more tools in their belt over men, like women's intuition, that EQ feeling to sense and know.
Big words today,
you
brother.
Like that, mate?
Big words.
Dictionary for breakfast. And being able to use their sexuality to their advantage as well.
Oh,
and that happens. And
we saw that in trading yesterday. What happened yesterday in trading? I was giving someone a hard time. I was giving a lady a hard time. She turned around, she gave me that one line, and she had me laughing. Yep. Remember? So it's an amazing thing, but People don't get it. Why? Because it's our education. But we're educating our kids differently, right? So you're already educating, even your son, and you are the same. You've got the same power. Where we come from, that education that is more patriarchal style, and it's very much like boys, we come with that and we do this. Now they don't. So wait until they have that. Plus, you talking about bricklayers, mate? Won't be long before machine will do the bricklaying.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So there's no more need for bricklayers. It's going to be better than bricklayers, because bricklayers, they still have brakes. They have the radio going full blast, so
they can't work in the rain.
Noise pollution and all that stuff. Make the machine. You won't complain. And finish the house on time. So I would say we have now gone to a state in the evolution where the technology actually allows women to do everything that used to be done even by men.
Which is fine. There's going to be...
Now, the way you say it, I don't feel it's fine.
No.
The way you say it, the words feel fine, but your entire persona was...
What I'm thinking is, and it's because of the upbringing and because there's a lot of people from the older culture where it was thought of that the men do the men stuff and the women do the women stuff, there's always going to be someone who's raised that way who will try and keep a good female down. That's always going to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? So what I meant by it's fine is it's okay if women are doing the same job as you. You don't have to be threatened by that, but there is always going to be some who are threatened, but I don't think it's...
There'll be some industries where it's more apparent than others.
But I think the problem is, so we agree there's always going to be some.
Yeah.
I feel the whole problem with the feminist movement is...
All of it.
It's
everyone. It can't be all or nothing.
The male gender is trying to keep the women gender back because they're threatened. And that's why I know it didn't sound good when I went, it's fine, 100%, it's fine. And it's not, but there's always going to be a guy.
Some areas that will be more apparent though, like if you have, say, a female sports presenter, it's always different. Like in a football, say, for example.
They're becoming a lot more common now, and they're very good at what
No, we've spoken about that before too.
They're becoming more common, but I would still say a male, like a male
someone
watching footy
watching the football.
is going, like if they're doing football stuff, a male is always going to know more because they've been there, they've done it, they've experienced it. But a female presenting netball, for example, different story.
Yeah,
and that's okay. It's okay. We've talked about this on the podcast before. It's okay for the NRL to have 4 guys who have played rugby league at the highest level advising and analysing and commenting on the NRL. You don't have to stick 3 females there who have never played the game just because of this world that we've lived in now where you have to meet every demographic possible. And that's the problem, right? My wife sits there and walks out and goes, what are these ladies doing? I'll use the example last time we spoke about. Andrew Johns, the greatest rugby league player of all time, is getting over-talked by 3 ladies who have never played a game of rugby league in their life about rugby league. Just the same as I wouldn't expect Vicky Wilson or any of the greatest netball players of all time to be spoken to or over the top of by a bloke who's never played netball for Australia.
Or a female that's never played netball.
And that's the problem there.
Now, here is what I want to ask from this book, from this chapter. In the world of business and maybe other worlds too, to be at the top, you have to be highly aggressive. Right? To some of those top CEOs, it's a very aggressive world. So as women rise to the top from what he's talking about here now, because they top at uni, they're going to be headhunted by big corporations. And does that make them more aggressive than at home? And if they're more aggressive at home now, do we now have a problem?
Where are the kids?
Some men might like that.
No, but where are the kids getting the absolute nurture from? Because mums are mums, right? And mums are there for that, the absolute nurturing. It's not to say that the fathers aren't meant to be nurturing, but it's a different kind of nurture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But if
I think just because they're aggressive at work doesn't need to be that mean they're aggressive at home all the time. Everyone knows.
Careful, man. Careful. You become what you do. My younger brother is fantastic kid until he started in the police. And I've got no problem with the police, all right? I've never done anything wrong. But after a few years, he started to become a policeman at home.
Wow, okay.
And I've now seen a lot of policemen that the same way. They even if they were so gentle before, the way they talk to their kids, it's almost as if they were still working. I told you to go over there now. It's almost like, give you a ticket. And no wonder, have a look at the ratio of policemen who've got anger issues after a certain amount of time, years in the police force, or even having domestic violence.
Mental health.
I think you need to look at it. Like, it's one of my downfalls with my kids is the conversations are very similar to the conversations I have at work.
Sign here.
Well, but
I will go to bed at 7 p.m.
That'll be 3%. It's coming. But yeah, I think if you're spending all day battling and fighting to be the CEO of a company and dealing with competitors and negotiating multi-billion-dollar deals and all you have to have an ego, you have to be aggressive, you have to be able to go for the kill. That's all the stuff that have to be able to do. You can't just switch that off when you walk in the door.
It will, and they vibe off it. So whatever we're doing, they're always watching, and it will always come back at some point. You know, something that you wouldn't have even thought they've heard or picked up on it pops back up, and you think, how did they hear that conversation, or how did they, hear that, know to say that line or whatever. But I think no matter what role you do, most people's work will have some level of stress or pressure or load that comes with it. So it's about learning to be able to have that space in between work and home, so that when you do walk in that door, and it's not easy, I'm not saying I've got it right or any of us have got it right, but you've got to try and walk in the door and be the mum, because they want you to be the mum. But in saying that, before I finish, they also need to know that not every day is a good day. If you have had a bad day, it's okay to tell them that you've had a bad day. I'm cranky because I've had a bad day, or I'm really busy and I just, like, they have to get that as well. You can't just walk in the door every day and everything's rosy.
Yeah.
They need to understand that it's okay to have bad days, because they will too. And when they do, it needs to come back the other way, where they can talk to you about it.
100%. I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but what Thomas is saying is, if this is where the world's going and women are taking over all the top jobs, and let's be honest, all of us pretty much is, except for Chris at the moment, spend more time at work than we do at home. All right, that's going to change your personality. It's going to change that nurture, and I don't think that can be avoided. Yeah. So where does that leave us? Where does it leave the upcoming generations of kids?
It means you're
going to be a lot of
little bossy groups.
Yeah, I think they will work it out. But here's the next question I have. What about us who've been brought up this way? Then we're sitting down with our kids, and maybe our kids still too young, but our grandkids, and they now swap it. The man's doing the nappy change and all this stuff, and cooking at home and all that stuff. How will we adapt to that kind of advice? How will we be adapting to let's imagine this, seeing our daughters, coming and picking up the kids, not even picking up the kids, but they're coming home every night at 10, because the husband is looking after the homework for the kids. We did an interview this week with the dude. He's the guy who's picking up the kids already, this generation. How do we deal with this?
I think it's still way in its early stages, and those conversations, for the most part, probably will be happening after we're already gone. And I include me in that, even though you.
No, I don't think so. I think that things are going very, very fast.
Well, what I'm going to say is, I'm talking from personal experience here, you will emulate what you see from your parents.
Yeah.
So I saw both mum and dad going to work very fucking hard for whatever it took to put food on the table. So you say whatever you want about me, but one thing I have is work ethic. I will always work and work and work and work. And my kids have all they've seen is me and their mother work extremely hard, and some of it to their detriment, where we're not at all the places we would like to be as parents. So it's not until the kids start seeing someone changing nappies and doing all the stuff that would normally be the role of the female or the woman in the relationship, will that, I believe, start to change in the kids.
Well, I think it already has, because if you look at previous generations, it was always that the female stayed at home and looked after the kids and did the dinners, did the washing, and the male wouldn't have touched a thing to do with dinner, a thing to do with the washing. And over time that's changing. And in some households it does look different. The male will do more than the female, or like I know some households where the male would cook dinner every night of the week. Not in mine, but it does happen. And as time goes on, I think it's a different level of
So do you think that one day the women will become the one coming home and turning on the telly and then grabbing a beer?
Be nice.
Right? Well,
it's different. But to go back to what you were saying about like future generations as us as grandparents, because I know even with my parents now, like certain decisions or certain things that I'll do with the kids, and your mum will say, you shouldn't, you can almost feel the, not judging, but that's how they would have done it. So she's trying to advise me how she would have done it, but that's not how I'm doing it with my kids.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from them and what they brought us up amazingly, but I'm not going to be a replica of them, because I'm not them.
No, and because it's not the same time.
Times have changed.
Things have changed, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, well, I think we covered this chapter very well. Thank you very much, Chris, for all of those nice words. And I think
you've gone up too early, mate. We've got another one to go after.
The
straight line is here, right? It feels like we've done the Melbourne Cup with this book. Chapter 12 is coming out. All right, so let's do it next week.
You're one by a nose, mate.
A hair on the nose.